All right, so for this discussion, I want to talk about the question, what is JavaScript? And I think I'm just going to start right here on freecodecamp.org and talk through sort of their explanation and add some additional context and some other explanations to illustrate what exactly JavaScript is and why you use it. So at a first pass, JavaScript is a high-level programming language that all modern web browsers support. And, it says high-level programming language. High-level really just means that it incorporates things that are easier for humans to understand. So elements of the English language, as opposed to a low-level programming language, gets closer to the style of symbols that a computer could more readily understand. So in JavaScript, you'll see words that occur in English. You'll see words like function, true, false. You'll see words like if and else. And so it's not natural language. Like you might speak, English, or you might speak Spanish. Those are natural languages. It's not a natural language itself, but it can incorporate, and it does incorporate some words and things that are closer to what a human would readily understand. It is a core technology of websites. And in fact, I was looking this up and I wanted to know what percent of websites use JavaScript. And it says it's used, this site says it's used by 95% of websites. Now, I'm not sure how they know that, but what I can say is once you know kind of what it is and what it does, you won't be surprised that you're going to start to see JavaScript everywhere. And that's because it adds a lot of functionality, interactivity, dynamics to a website. Sometimes when you think of a website, you just think, oh, there's just a page with some text on it and some images. But, many websites nowadays do way more than that. You can log in, you can log out, you can update things and store information. And so JavaScript is a language that allows you to add that interactivity, that dynamic interaction with the website. And if you just look down through here, for example, in some of these lessons, you can see all sorts of things that it does. You can store information in variables, you can add, you can subtract, you can multiply, divide. And I think it's important just to give an overview of kind of like some of these ideas before diving into some of the lessons. Multiplying, finding remainder. You have strings, which is, those are a bunch of characters together that typically could be like text or, numbers. It's a type of data. There's all kinds of stuff. You have arrays and array methods. And if a lot of these things don't make sense at the outset, it's just not that important yet to understand. It's just that, look, there's a lot of different things you can do. There's logic. So you can add if-else statements. You can check whether things are true and say, hey, if this thing's true, do this to the website, or if there's something else that's true, do that. So right off the bat, you can see that there's a lot more that you can do to a website. I like this article here from Hack Reactor, which kind of goes into a little bit more depth. It's text-based programming language. You can use both on the client side and server side. And like they say, it makes web pages more interactive. HTML and CSS, they say, gives you your structure of your website and your style. Like, what does it look like? Is it red, blue, green, Is it spaced out this much around the edges? Does it have this much margin, this much padding? These are all things that you can do. HTML gives you the structure, CSS gives you the style, whereas JavaScript makes the things on the page, the elements, interactive. As a user, it engages you, and you can put in input and get output back. There's a bunch of common examples. Like it says, zoom in, zoom out, slide through a carousel of images, change color of a button, show or hide more information with the click of a button, display animations, use a drop-down hamburger menu, create web and mobile applications, build web servers and developer server applications, game development. There's so many things you can do. And like some of these common examples that they give, like search boxes on Amazon, a news recap video embedded on New York Times, or, when you refresh your Twitter feed. These are all things that are behaviors that are of a website that are created with JavaScript. So that's essentially why you use it and sort of what it can do. There's a bunch of different ways to talk about JavaScript. People will talk about JavaScript as an interpreted language as opposed to a compiled language. And there are many more lessons to dive into. Sometimes people will talk about the distinction between HTML as a markup language and JavaScript as a true programming language, and that relates to some of those features that we talked about before, the logic, the ability to write functions, and to give it more robust instructions for what to do, and I think that there's some merit to also talk about HTML as a programming language. It's just more useful to just think about what does it specifically do as a language. It just marks up the page, whereas with JavaScript, you're getting a lot more interactivity, and you can really create very robust, full applications. So yeah, that is kind of my thought on JavaScript. I hope that adds a little bit of extra detail. I think it's really important to go and just get an overview. We didn't really talk about, we touched on what is a programming language, what makes something a language as opposed to, just a set of symbols. And I think there's interesting linguistic conversations to be had there. What makes something a formal language as opposed to just a set of symbols. But essentially, that is JavaScript as far as like a basic understanding goes. It adds dynamic abilities to a page that HTML and CSS cannot achieve alone by themselves. It's a more robust language that allows you to provide more complex algorithms, write functions, create objects, do all sorts of stuff, use conditional logic. So yeah, that is my answer to what is JavaScript.